I wanted to make a consolidated list of common fixed and variable expenses so that if I'm ever discussing the topic with friends, I have everything that I need to reference in one individual location. Which got me thinking that this might also be a valuable resource to others as well, especially those starting to get into personal finance and maybe people who are tracking their expenses, where their money's going, what they're spending money on in order to build a budget. Welcome back to my channel. My name is Reese and today's video is all about fixed and variable expenses. I recently took up the challenge to calculate my expected expenses for the year of 2022. I did this because I wanted to set a reasonable savings goal and kind of needed this information in order to project what I'm going to be able to save pretty accurately. And I've made a video talking about it and left a link down in the description below if you were interested in seeing what I've set as that goal and why I've set it. And the other reason why I set out to calculate my expenses for the year is because in general, I think it's really important and valuable to understand what they are, because your expenses, the things that you put money towards, are the things that allow you to live your current life and lifestyle. And when you understand these expenses, know what they are and when they're coming in terms of weekly, fortnightly, monthly, or even annually, it gives you a lot of power to keep your budget together, and it also allows you to navigate your cash flow a lot easier. Overspending is the big killer here, especially when trying to reach a savings goal or stick to a solid budget. So when you understand and know what these expenses are going to be, it will help you fight against falling into common financial traps. Okay, so before I go through my list of examples, let's define the difference between a fixed expense and a variable expense. I define a fixed expense as something that is going to remain constant in my budget. And what I'm specifically referring to is the amount. A fixed expense generally will not change too much month to month. Whereas a variable expense might be something that you're still paying for regularly, but the amount that you're spending will differ depending on different factors. So to create the reminder for myself, I'm literally just going to list fixed and variable expenses that are really common in the world. I've listed them down in the description as well. And if you want to skip over me literally reading from a list, just press L on your keyboard a couple of times. It will skip forward about 10 seconds every time you press it. There's a pretty wide range of fixed expenses. Some examples include things like your rent, your mortgage repayments, your loan repayments, so like your car loan or your student loans, things like insurance premiums. I'm talking private health, maybe home and contents insurance, your car insurance is another one, your phone bill, your car registration, utility bills, things like your internet, power, gas, water, things like your gym membership, childcare expenses, so actually sending your kid to childcare, maybe tuition fees if they're a kindergartner or like a toddler in primary school, things like gym memberships, your strata fees, groceries, bank fees if you have account fees. Some banks actually charge you to hold accounts or open accounts. Some banks charge you to have a home loan. Like depending the package you're on, you will pay a fee every year just for having a home loan. Things like child support payments and social support is probably another really good one. They generally stay pretty consistent and I count them as an expense. I participate in a few different social sports every week. I definitely have them on the list. And then variable expenses include things like dining out, purchasing clothes, doing personal care things. You might go get a massage, you might buy skincare products, just as two very simple examples. Entertainment, you might be going to the cinemas, you might pay for streaming services such as Netflix or Disney Plus, Apple Music, Spotify. You might vary with your petrol spending depending on the frequency that you're driving. I, as someone who is working from home a hell of a lot more since the pandemic began, I am spending less on petrol, but that number still varies depending on if I have a busy week or I need to go to the office multiple times in a single week. Things like that will definitely change the amount you're spending on petrol. Home and car maintenance costs. So let's say you want to modify your backyard or you want to oil your deck, you want to paint something in the house. There's always stuff to be done around the house and those costs will vary as time goes on. Things like parking fees, if you go to a place of work, for example, and you have to pay for parking, that's definitely a big one. Hobbies and recreational costs would probably be the biggest killer depending on how active you are in the community and how many hobbies and things you decide to spend money on. All of them are really strong examples. The only one I kind of left out that I want to put in there as well would be if you smoke or drink a lot of alcohol. Those are definite variable costs that would fluctuate depending on how busy your life is, how frequently you're going out, and how addicted to those products you are, which is another conversation. They would definitely fit the category of variable expense as well. As a quick side note, another type of fixed expense that isn't specifically spending in the now would be saving. In general, if you're saving a specific amount of money every time you're paid to be purposed towards something, like, I don't know, you're saving for a wedding, you want to purchase a new iPhone, item, that type of thing is pretty consistent. It's going to be technically a fixed expense because the same amount of money is coming out of your account every time you're paid. Now, when putting together a budget, reducing fixed expenses is going to generally be a lot harder to do than reducing variable expenses. This is because of the nature of the type of expense that you're paying for. For example, if you're renting, as in you're paying money to live somewhere, that amount that you're paying is going to stay pretty steady for the time of the contract. It's going to be hard to negotiate it unless the contract is up and you're wanting to stay longer, or the only other way to really reduce it is going to be to move out into a more affordable location. This is not something that is going to happen often in terms of if you sign a contract for 12 months, generally you're going to spend the 12 months there and pay what you've agreed to pay. This is a great example of how fixed expenses remain constant. Fixed expenses in general, the same logic can be applied. If anything, a fixed expense is only ever going to go up. So if you're trying to budget and find holes where you can reduce your fixed expenses or your expenditure on fixed expenses, just understand that it's generally going to be pretty difficult to reduce those amounts unless you're making drastic changes, and these changes aren't necessarily going to be easy to make often. This is where reducing variable expenses in the short term can keep your budget in line at the cost of making small lifestyle sacrifices. In the instance where you need to reduce your spending, definitely look at the variable expenses first. They are going to be the easiest ones to target and knuckle down on to definitely save in the short term. As sad as it may be, an example would be if you dine out regularly, you spend lots of money on alcohol, or you put lots of your money towards recreational hobbies and activities, you could wean back on that a little bit if you were trying to achieve a very specific financial goal. The only real issue with tackling variable expenses is that they're variable expenses. So estimating and looking forward at how much you're spending on these activities is going to be hard to gauge depending on what it is that you're trying to tackle. Again, if I was into rock climbing and I had all the gear I needed and something broke and I wanted to continue doing that activity and this one thing I needed had to be purchased, it's going to affect how much I'm spending on it during that period of time. That's a very specific example, but I guess it sets the tone, is that you can never predict what you're really truly going to spend on your variable expenses. You can just be conscious of it and do your best to not overspend when you're trying not to overspend. However, to wrap up today's video, once you understand what your fixed and variable expenses are, I highly recommend doing the following. Number one is to budget for essentials first. This is as simple as writing a list of all of your expenses and then ranking them. Whatever's at the top is important. Go to that last. They are the things that let you continue living your life. Start at the bottom, and if you do not need them there because they just rank really low and you kind of sit there and go, why am I spending money on this? Get rid of them. And that's how you can start to tackle your budget to save more. And number two, I suggest tracking all of your variable and fixed expenses. There is a lot of power in understanding where your money is going, and this is the easiest way to collect that data. I use my own personal finance tracking spreadsheet that I have used for the better half of the last decade, and it has been refined and refined year after year. Coincidentally, I've actually made the template available for you to download if you would like a copy of your own to use for yourself, and it's completely free. It's down in the description below. The link will be there. Feel free to take a copy for yourself and use it however you wish. I've also made a video, also linked down below, explaining how to use it step by step. So if you think you might get some value out of it, feel free to check out those resources that I've made available to you, the viewer, if you've made it this far into the video and are not already using it yourself. All I really ask is if you could just hit that like and subscribe button down below. I really do appreciate the support, and it really does go a long way for the channel. Then once you understand what your expenses are and you understand how to cut the expenses that you don't need to be spending money on in your life, I highly recommend sticking to the plan that you put in place and committing to it long term. The flow-on effect and compound effect of doing this, you will definitely not be disappointed with the results. The outcome of this will see you avoiding taking on unnecessary debt and will allow you to spend your excess income freely, however you want to. It will let you go on holidays or focus on savings goals and push for getting to those milestones faster with the excess income you generate from reducing your unnecessary expenses. There's a lot of power in understanding this and putting it into practice. It's something that I've done my entire life, and I'm very happy that I have. And that's why I talk about it on this channel. It's why I create these refreshers for myself. And it's why a topic as simple as talking about fixed and variable expenses can go a long way, especially for the people who pay attention and actually take action with it. And that's pretty much all I have for today's video. I think it was a pretty comprehensive list. I thought it was a bit of information soak or dive. So hopefully you got some value out of some parts of the video. And like I said, feel free to use those resources I've linked down below. With that being said, I hope you have a good day. I hope you have a good week. And as always, I will see you in the next one. Bye for now.